Paul Hopewell. Welcome back to my shed. This is where I make all sorts of stuff, usually for old or classic motor vehicles or machines, and I show you what I went through to finish the project. I'm currently working on a steady rest, but I've had to put it to one side because I've received an urgent job for a 1969 Bond 875. This little classic is soon due to be on display in the Classic Motor Show at the NEC. But if it don't go, it ain't going. It concerns the clutch master cylinder, more to do with the push rod retention clip than the cylinder itself. This is the second one this guy's purchased, and both have had the same issue. These master cylinders are only produced as aftermarket components now, and I don't know where they're made, but I don't think it was local. Anyway, after fondling this thing for all of 30 seconds, I discovered the reason the circlip let go. The recess is too narrow for the circlip to engage, and this being the case, the circlip can't retain the clutch pedal push rod when the clutch pedal is released. The inertia created by the clutch pedal as it's released is such that the washer at the end of the push rod gets a little nudge. If the circlip isn't doing anything, then the push rod drops out. The owner of this vehicle has replaced the clip with one from his box of bits, but this is too small, and the same thing happens. To remachine the recess, I'm going to use the 4-jaw chuck in the South Bend lathe. You can see here I've got a problem. One of the jaw screws is cracked. A previous brazing job has let go, so it looks like I've got another job to do. To protect the gubbins inside this master cylinder, I can take it to bits and suffer the wrath of Murphy's Law or plug it. So plug it I did. I used a washer that was a good fit, one thin enough to allow me room to get a tool in without it getting in the way. I also covered the hole in this washer with a bit of insulation tape. I trimmed this tape off, leaving enough on to make the washer a tight fit in the ball. I also wrapped a bit more tape around the plastic caps. I tried not to put too much tape around the back of this cylinder. After all, I'm going to have to be careful not to over-tighten the jaws, and having too much tape on one jaw might cause the jaw not to properly grip. There were two versions of this 875, and they were about 3,500 made in between 1965 and the early 1970. They were all fitted with a 4-cylinder 875 low-compression Hillman Imp engine. Currently there are about half a dozen still roadworthy. This is one with one other that is still taxed for road use. Several are known to be roadworthy but in storage and in a reasonable condition, but no one knows how many are languishing in orchards or at the back of old barns. They were a very good little runabout in the time, but they had been plagued with all sorts of weaknesses, like the seats breaking through the floor pan or the windscreen popping out. Anyway, to set this job true in the chuck, I elected to use an old technique. This technique is still in use around many old engineering shops and around many third world countries. Don't scoff, it's been a while, I'm a bit rusty. But I have used this technique a lot in the past to set up some very big castings. Although I've seen many videos recently of people setting up workpieces for a finishing cut this way. So I thought I'll have a go. After all, how hard can it be? Well, would you believe it? It's almost perfect. If you believe that, you probably think that babies are delivered by storks. That said, it was only 8th hour when I first checked it, and that still ain't bad. As you can see, the high-speed steel tool is one that I ground for another job quite some time ago, and all I had to do was blow the dust off and run a diamond tool polisher over the tip. The side of the tailstock quill is an old setting marker that I use for setting these high-speed steel tools to height. Before I did that, I loosely set the compound slide to 90 degrees to the right, and then I completed the tool height setting. I reset the compound slide back to 0 degrees, locked it down and presented the tool to the workpiece. Doing this presented the cutting tool to the workpiece, allowing me to align it with the inboard recess face. Trust me, it was easier to say than to do. When I finally get a cut on, I expect the actual cutting time to take about 60 seconds or less. That would have led to a very short video indeed, but as with all machining operations, it's the prep work, head scratching and tea making that takes the time. Just to reiterate, the recess for this circlip is too narrow, so the circlip can't do its job. Also, the retaining washer is a tad smaller than it should be, so much so that if the circlip was fully engaged, the washer would probably squeeze past. Fitting one of these circlips would be a better choice, but this one has got to be replaced with a new and one size larger circlip. Anyway, having received my instructions and a promise that a newer, better fitting circlip will be purchased, I got on with the lengthy task of widening the recess. I did this at the slowest speed I could, just in case the recess diameter was out of shape. That was the plan until I took my eyes off the ball. I was concentrating so hard on the index wheel that I didn't see the casting move in the jaws. I chose this low speed so that I could see and catch any errors during the turning process. That plan didn't work, did it? Anyway, after tapping it back into place again, I managed to bottom out at 32 thou. Then I left it to dwell for a little while. Popping the washer wasn't too difficult, and just for good measure I wiped everything again just to be sure it was perfectly clean. After I'd finished fitting the pushrod assembly and circlip, I took it all apart again and put some brake grease in just to lubricate the ball end and to protect the rubber seals. That's it, job done. I scarcely had time to take it out of the chuck before the doorbell started to jangle off the wall. Now I'll be able to get on with that steady rest again. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.